Good afternoon and welcome back to Dr. Logic Awkwardly Does Logic in Her Kitchen. If we are going to talk about the way in which logic is an epistemological tool, we need to first say something about the broad field of epistemology in Indian philosophy. As a discipline, what this field is interested in is different ways in which we can know things, or specifically, the different categories of the means of knowledge. Now, this is a technical term, and it's the first of many technical terms that we will be introducing in this context, and it corresponds to a Sanskrit word. So you may have spent much of this series of videos thinking, I had no idea I had to learn this much Latin in order to do logic. Well, guess what? You also need to learn some Sanskrit. So I will bring up my whiteboard so that I can write things down. And if we're looking for peak awkwardness, watching Dr. Logic trying to write Sanskrit on the whiteboard is going to be it, because I can never remember where the dots go. Anyway, we are going to start off by identifying 6 different means of knowledge or instruments of knowledge. And the technical word for this is, I'm going to write it and then say it because I can't do both at the same time. So there's a line over that A and a dot under that way. Pramāna. So the pramāna are the different instruments of knowledge, means of knowledge, ways in which we can know things. So these are, again, I'm going to write them and then I'm going to say them. There is anumana, pratyaksha, shabda, upamana, artapati, and anupalabdi. Don't worry, I will gloss each of these so that you've got some actual English words to go with them. But a couple of things I wanted to say is that these are kind of the ones that you will find spoken of very broadly speaking in Indian philosophy. Pretty much all of these are going to be accepted in the Hindu traditions. The other traditions may only accept a subset of these as being appropriate for actual appropriate guides to knowledge. So very broadly speaking, we can say that Hindu traditions accept all of them. The Jain traditions are interested in the first 3, and then the Buddhist in the first 2. Now, luckily for us, the first one is something that we can translate as inference. This is the logical tool, and it's the one that all of the systems accept. And therefore, when we focus on the study of anumana as a formalized tool of argumentation or reasoning or inference as a means of knowledge, we don't have to be very concerned with kind of ideological differences between Hinduism and Buddhism. Now, these are interesting questions. They are just not going to be relevant for studying the logical aspects that we are interested in. So I'm saying that now to just say we're going to kind of bracket a lot of the more kind of religious side of and spiritual side of things and focus just on sort of the practical side. But what are the other ones? So pratyaksha is perception. So using eyes, ears, other means of gaining knowledge about the world through our senses. Shabda is testimony. So one way that you can learn something is by having someone tell it to you. In fact, look at what we've been doing. If you have learned anything from these videos, some of it you have probably learned through inference by doing some actual kind of reasoning activities yourself. but a lot of what you've simply learned because you've listened to my testimony. Then we have Upamana, which is reasoning or justification through comparison or analogy. So this is a super interesting topic, particularly kind of from modern Western reasoning perspectives who have all of a sudden been like, analogical reasoning. This isn't something that logic does much with. Well, it's just because you haven't gone and looked at what other traditions have said about these topics. Then we have artopathy, which is it's a bit difficult to translate, but I'm just going to go with, it's a derivation from circumstances. So you might ask, well, like, how does this differ from inference? And in fact, this is an interesting question, kind of the difference between anumana and artopathy. But artopathy has to do with kind of inferences that you can make given a particular situation or circumstances that you are in. And then we've got anupalabdhi, which is kind of argumentation from, or evidence from non-perception or negative proof. So again, since we aren't going to be talking about that pramana, I'm not going to say much more about it. So the one that we are interested in and that we are going to spend the next couple of videos talking about is anumana, the theory of inference, and the ways in which we can construct arguments that are not necessarily deductively valid, but yet still give us grounds for acting as if we know something. So it's not necessarily going to be a foolproof justification. The particularly interesting thing about the study of anumana is that it is fallible. We could be mistaken. We might, in the presence of new information, have to revise our conclusions. But lacking contrary information, lacking defeaters, the sorts of arguments that we will be studying under anumana will be the such that if you've got this as justification for your believing in a particular proposition or acting as if that certain proposition is true, you have a good justification for your actions. And that is the notion of good arguments that we're going to be interested in. This, do you have something that justifies your belief in this particular conclusion? So we will get into the details. We will actually be looking at a couple of different Buddhist authors and what they have to say about kind of the historical development of this particular style of reasoning and style of argumentation. How do you formalize an argument that meets these qualities? What are the structural features of them that kind of warrant such an argument being one that gives you justification? What are the possible defeaters? What are the possible fallacious ways of reasoning? Things that might look good but aren't. And we'll, as I said, we'll look at all of these technical definitions, trace through the history, and then at the end I will say something about kind of the importance of why we do this and kind of things we can learn from doing it, but also bad ways of doing what we're doing and good ways of doing what we're doing. Hopefully we're doing one of the good ways. But join me next time and we'll talk about this more. Take care. Cheers.